Hey guys, it's Megan with Vigilante Vibes, and today I want to talk about the Punisher. We have had so many iterations of him in live action movies and TV shows, but who is the man behind all of these Frank Castles? With Daredevil Born Again bringing the Punisher into the MCU and Frank getting his own Marvel Studios special presentation, now feels like the perfect time to deep dive into the comic counterpart. And as always, I will be starting from the beginning, but it is so hard. I tried so hard to condense his story because I don't think you guys want to sit here and listen to me talk for 45 minutes. Unless you do. If you're into that kind of thing, let me know in the comments. Maybe I'll give a broader version. So, Frank Castle first appeared in Marvel Comics in The Amazing Spider-Man number 129 in 1974. Fun fact, he was named by Stan Lee. A lot of characters were, but I felt this was important for some reason. He was born Francis Castelloni and was born in Queens, New York, just like our boy Spider-Man, to Sicilian immigrants. Frank was expected to become a priest. He studied to be a priest, but as we can all see, that just didn't pan out for a lot of reasons. Castelloni was very violent from a young age, oftentimes giving extensive injuries to bullies. Many think his violence came from the loss of his family, but nope. He's always been someone who's tried to serve justice in his own way, no matter how violent. The violence would cause him to be observed by the Hand, we all know and love. If you're not familiar with the comics, then you know a lot about the Hand from the Netflix Marvel shows like Daredevil, Iron Fist, Punisher, that kind of stuff. After being haunted by the deaths of a couple that were brutally murdered by a mafioso, 10-year-old Frank killed the mafioso by setting him on fire after dumping homemade napalm on him. This was his first kill at 10 years old. 10 years old. It's been a lifelong life, I guess. So you see, the priest lifestyle wasn't meant for dear old Frank. Instead, he joined the Marine Corps and served in Vietnam. During his tenure in the Vietnam War, he would win the Purple Star as well as learn the techniques that he would later use as a vigilante. A curious side note is how the Punisher's backstory has never been updated. Marvel utilizes a sliding time scale in order to keep their characters at around the same age. Iron Man, for example, originally made his suit during the Vietnam War, but this has been updated to him getting his suit during the Gulf War and later during the War of Terror. Frank Castle is one of the few characters to not have this done to them. Captain America and Magneto are some other ones that also have not changed. But moving on, he fought in the decades-long Siakong War in the country of Siakong, alongside the likes of Ben Grimm, Reed Richards, Tony Stark, James Rhodes. So he's always been on the radar. Whether that radar belonged to a hero or a villain, that's a different story. After his time in Vietnam, he joined the police, married, became a father of two. After returning from overseas, Frank became distant from Maria, his wife, and his children due to what he had experienced. In short, he showed signs of PTSD. While Maria managed to convince Frank to attend couples counseling and even give confession at church, Frank ultimately grew more distant and began sleeping in a tent in their backyard. Frank later started to show signs of improvement, but it wasn't long before Frank returned to his old habits. Frank took up work in the meatpacking district in order to provide money for his family and slowly grew closer to his children. However, it got to the point that Maria planned to ask for a divorce on their next trip to Central Park. That trip to Central Park is what changed it all for Frank. While at Central Park, Frank's family accidentally witnessed a mob killing. The mob family in question, called the Costas, performed a mob execution. They didn't want any witnesses, so they shot Castle's family, and depending on the author, Frank was either he was also shot and survived, or he arrived late to meet his family. Despite evidence from Frank, the executioners managed to get away with unaliving. Enraged, Frank became a vigilante called the Punisher, with the direct aim to make sure nothing like this would ever happen again. Once coming up with the idea for the Punisher, Frank promised to always fight against crime and injustice. What set him apart from other heroes and even villains was not just his penchant for unaliving, but how personal he took each encounter. This is because when his family died, Frank could not forgive those who had harmed him so horribly. I mean, fair. This inability to forgive and motivation to hand out justice on his own terms is what directly led to his crusade to punish. He cannot forgive any criminals for the aggressions they commit against the innocent, and therefore treats all crime and encounters like the first he had with the Costa family. He absolutely, without a doubt, is the vigilante of vigilantes. He's an anti-hero. As we've discussed, Frank Castle does not hesitate to unalive those he deems unworthy of living and worthy of punishment. The Punisher's use of unaliving and other illegal tactics in his pursuit of justice is what makes him an anti-hero. More so than other anti-heroes, Frank has a well-established history of going against the law to accomplish his goals. In his first outing as the Punisher, he goes against the courts and takes justice into his own hands, which is kind of his thing. He does that. Frank believes, for better or for worse, that the only way to keep a criminal from repeating a crime is to end their life. Over the years following his initial appearance, Frank Castle as the Punisher would appear in various comics. In 1976, with the Amazing Spider-Man number 161, he would reappear and would even get his own archenemy. A hitman named Billy Russo was hired to unalive Castle by the Costa family. He failed, and the Punisher threw him through a window panel, which tore his face to shreds, which is so gross. A botched surgery left his face horrifically scarred, and that inspired Russo to become a mob dealer and try to frame the Punisher. This failed thanks to Spider-Man and a member of the X-Men we all know and love, Nightcrawler, who, by the way, is my favorite one, so fun fact for you there. But he would become one of Punisher's reoccurring opponents, Jigsaw. In 1986, the Punisher would finally gain his own series, which would be far darker than the regular Marvel prints. Although Jigsaw would be a regular villain, he would be the one of the few due to the fact that Frank Castle would often unalive his opponents. He even got a sidekick in the form of Microchip, a computer programmer who helped the Punisher get weapons and track his foes. During the 1980s and the 1990s, Castle would get two other series. War Journal, it would run from 1988 to 1995, which is a long time. And Warzone, running 1992 to 1995, as well as two black and white magazines. During this period, he would take on hundreds of criminals from around the world, including the Yakuza, Russian, Italian mafia, cartels, the Aryan Brotherhood, corrupt cops, and some ones that I can't actually name in this video because I feel like my video will get flagged. I don't know how YouTube works, so I don't know. By the late 1990s, the steam in the Punisher comics would start to run out, the excitement kind of downward slope. However, in 2000, there was a storyline which would be so popular, it became implemented into a video game. Wanting to strike fear once again into the hearts of New York's criminal underworld, he decided to go after the Nucci crime family. Ma Nucci ran the family with her 3 sons, so the Punisher decided to wear them down in the war. Castle managed to unalive her sons while Nucci retaliated by having the police, who were in her pocket, obviously, hunt down Castle. Virtually unarmed, he led Nucci and her army to the Central Park Zoo, where he unalived them one by one until Nucci was the only one left. He then threw her into the polar bear enclosure, and the bears proceeded to maul her. If you know anything about polar bears, you know this is so accurate because they are terrifying, unaliving machines. She survived, even having a bodyguard shoot her cousin when asked how she is. And had a hitman named the Russian unalive Castle for $10 million. The Russian failed, and Castle returned to finish what he had started. A few years later, Punisher Max was formed by Marvel to create a more gritty, more darker, for the darker variants of their characters. One of the series, called Alias, would be made canon by virtually all of the other stories that were not canon. Garth Ennis, an author known for his more violent and darker comics, so Punisher's right in his alley, became the main writer for the series and created a world full of crime. Another thing to note is how superpowers do not exist in this series. However, the impact the series had is nothing short than phenomenal. So much so that the parts of the story have been referenced in the mainstream comics. So I gave you a lot of information about him. We're not done. We have to talk about the skull logo. It's iconic. It is so, once you see it, you know whose it is. If one thing has become synonymous with the Punisher, it is the white skull logo that always appears on his chest. The skull has been on his chest since his original incarnation and has become a symbol for the punishment that Frank deals out to those who cross paths with him. The original Punisher from Marvel Comics chose the white skull while in Vietnam. While hunting an enemy sniper named the Monkey, who rivaled Frank's skills, he was taken prisoner. After escaping, he decided to leave a message for the Monkey by painting the infamous skull on a prisoner's chest as well as his own. After he defeated the Monkey and returned home, this symbol was again used to let Frank's enemies know not just their own fate, but who would be delivering that fate to them. In Punisher Max, the image of a white skull painted on a wall comes to him in a dream. The skull haunts him and reminds Frank of his ongoing internal war that forever rages on. With the tactical mind, especially of the Max version of Frank, he also uses a spray-painted skull on his chest as a distraction so that criminals will aim for that instead of his head. Like any Marvel character, Frank has died more than once in the comics. But also, like any Marvel character, our boy has been brought back. I'm going to start with the one that I think is just like the worst. I try to be so positive, but this one, I did not vibe with it at all. But that's okay. This one time he died, the Punisher was brought back, and he became Angel Punisher. After committing suicide, Frank was chosen to do heaven's bidding as an angel. Eventually, he grew tired of this type of reckoning and just tells the angels to F off. I just didn't want to be the only one that knew about it. If I'm going down, I'm taking us all down with me. It wasn't great. If you liked it, cool. I did not at all. The next time Punisher died was during the acclaimed Dark Reign storyline, in which Daken, Wolverine's son, dismembers Frank. Of course, this wasn't the last of Frank, as Morbius and Man-Thing reconstruct and revive him to form the renowned Franken-Castle. In this arc, he worked alongside other monsters and was portrayed as a hulking monster with huge weapons. At the end of the Franken-Castle arc, he was truly healed and brought back to the world of the living as he once was. Yeah. Anyways, let's talk about Punisher's abilities. We know he doesn't have powers, but he is as close to a superhero as anyone is. For example, his maximum human conditioning. The Punisher is in peak physical condition. Through his rigorous training and exercise regimens, he developed levels of speed, strength, endurance, reflexes, healing, longevity, metabolism, immune system efficiency near the absolute limits of human capability. That's pretty super, in my opinion. Next one, like master martial artist, weapons master, expert pilot, interrogation master, master tactician, like, it's just so crazy. Indomitable will. Frank has complete control of his mind and consciousness, providing a strong resistance against telepathic powers that are used against him. When Letha tries to control Frank's mind, he scoffs at the attempt and saying it doesn't feel any different from any other day. Also, he's a master assassin, obviously. Okay, I gave you all this information on Frank Castle. I hope you learned something with it, but if you did not, don't worry, because I have a whole list of comics that if you want to really get to know who Frank Castle is, who the character is, what he's about, you read these and I think they would do really well for you. Starting off, actually, before I start off, I just want to say I will have pictures of the comics if you're watching the video version of this rather than the audio, so you know which ones are the correct ones, because all of them contain the word Punisher, and it's just so many. I just wish they'd, throw a Frank Castle in there once in a while, but whatever. Starting off, Punisher, number 25 to 30, The Punisher, Born, 1 through 4, Punisher Max, number 1 to 6, Punisher number 19 to 24, The Punisher number 1 through 12, Punisher The Cell number 1, The Punisher 55 through 60, The Punisher number 1 through 5, The Amazing Spider-Man number 129, The Punisher 13 to 17, The Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe. This is one you want to check out. I love the Killing the Marvel Universe comics. This one, his family actually dies because they are casualties in a war between the X-Men and the Avengers. So definitely check that out. It's great. Punisher Year 1, 1 through 4. Punisher The End. Marvel Universe versus The Punisher 7 through 12. The Punisher War Machine Volumes 1 and 2. So I think if you check those out, or at least check some of them out, you don't have to read them all. That's crazy talk to think I expect that of you. I think you'll get a really better appreciation for who the Punisher is, who Frank Castle is, and what all he's done. I mean, his story is so much more than just being a vigilante. This is the same guy who turned into the Cosmic Ghost Rider and worked with Thanos. Like, he's a great character. Granted, some things are a little cheesy. Like when he was Angel Punisher, that was a ride, I guess. It's something. But like I said, he's a great character. And personally, I think Jon Bernthal is nailing him. Fantastic casting. That casting should be considered to be as top tier as RDJ as Iron Man, or Tom Hiddleston as Loki, or Charlie Cox as Daredevil. That's perfect casting. But I hope you learned something. Like I said, this was a lot to condense into like a less than 45-minute video. He just has so much backstory. So I do encourage you to go check out more about Frank Castle because he's great. So let me know in the comments what you think of Jon Bernthal's portrayal. What else do you want to know about Frank Castle? What else do you know about Frank Castle? Because I'd like to learn too. I don't know every single thing about him. And what comics do you recommend to get better to know him? Because I just have the ones I've gone through. But there's like a whole world of comics out there that I could be missing out on. So let me know in the comments. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any more of these character breakdowns. And if you're really, really nice, it would be cool if you shared this video or liked it. But that's okay. If you don't, it happens. So, with all that being said, have a marvelous day.